So today I'm going to be taking a look at the SMO 4K ultralight camera for FPV drones. This is a camera in conjunction with BetaFPV and Insta360. It's basically an Insta360 1R that has had the casing removed and it has been made smaller and lighter, just like the naked GoPro. Looks like it comes in two colors. We've got the black and the red, so very similar to the 1R styling, and this one is white and turquoise. Reminds me of the old Xiaomi camera, actually. I think it's going to be around $240, so around about the same price as a naked GoPro, at least if you're trying to do it with a Hero 6 or Hero 7. Comes around about that price, so it's competing with that directly. Let's take a look at the camera itself. So it weighs around 30 grams. And as you can see, the casing looks very similar to a naked GoPro. It is wider though. I believe this here is 11 millimeters. I tried to put it in a naked GoPro mount and it wouldn't fit. But Insta360 have provided some STL files for me to try out. You can see on the back of the case there's actually this little loop there, and that is designed to slot into a sort of smaller GoPro style mount and have a screw through it. And it will do 4K 60, it will do 4K 30 in 16:9, and it will also do 4:3 4K at the same time as well. And what I like about Insta360 and the 1R camera is the fact that all of the stabilization is done in post through either the phone app or the studio on the computer, which I really think a GoPro should be doing. You know, they've got hyper smooth, but you're locked into that. If you use it, you can't sort of add it and then remove it in post. And that's something I really like about this. You know, once you have shot your footage, you aren't stuck with the footage that it recorded. Although you could argue with a GoPro, if you have a real steady go setup, that is the same case. So it powers up from this 4-pin 1mm pitch JST cable. So it's different from the BetaFPV power cable that powers up the GoPro. I think that's because we have got the option there to add a couple of wires to turn the camera on and off, and also start and stop the recording from Betaflight. It does look a little bit of a pain to be doing that though in the setup, so I might skip that. So to change the settings on the camera itself, there's actually Wi-Fi built into it, so you'll be using the Insta360 1R phone app to change any of the settings. So if we just have a look in here, there should be another case, which is here. And you can see that's got the loop missing, and then we can have sort of a band of 3D printed material across the top there to make it a little bit more sturdy. Now, I've had the 1R for a while and have done some testing with it. Obviously, you can't add the 360 attachment to this. This is just the 4K 60 single lens. And when comparing it to a naked GoPro, the field of view isn't quite as wide, and it's not as good at dealing with Giallo as a GoPro at the same time. And I think that is why we have got some lenses in here. So that's an ND filter, ND16, I think it is. And what's this one here? This is a UV lens that goes over the top of it. So nice that they have thought about that. So if you are getting Giallo, then maybe stick these over the top. I have to say though, I found with the 1R that regardless of how much sunlight was there, I did get Giallo, but all I did with my 1R is I stuck it on a normal GoPro mount. So the GoPro performed fine, and this one, just a tiny bit of Giallo, not loads, so it might be okay. We'll have to see. Also in the box, we have got a Torque screwdriver, and that's because there are Torque screws on the back of here rather than your normal screws, so don't lose that. And then this is the cable here, so it's a 1mm pitch 4-pin JST cable with silicon wires. We have got the red wire, which is your voltage, so it will take from 6 volts all the way up to 6S, so 2 to 6S really. and it'll take direct power from that, which is pretty cool. And this lead is different from the naked GoPro leads, but you can get an adapter from BetaFPV that switches between the two if you have already got a naked GoPro set up with one of those connectors. There's some screws in there as well, and I think those are actually mounting screws by the looks of it. Okay, so this is how I have got it installed on the AndyRC rocket. Now this, with its 650 milliamp 3S battery for flying indoors, has an all-up weight of 224 grams, which is quite heavy for a model of this size, but it is under the 250 gram limit. So I have designed and 3D printed my own mount for it there, and I've got some angle on it as well if I like. And this is the ND16 filter up the front. Now, I've not used the wire harness that came in the package. Instead, I've used this one, so ignore the colors. I haven't added the other two wires, so the other two wires allow you to remotely turn on the camera and start and stop the recording. And I can see why you'd want to do that, because if the battery pulled in a crash with this and it was recording, then you could lose your footage. So if you can start and stop it once you have got the desired footage that you need, then that's great. But it looks like you have to do a lot of work in Betaflight and some remapping of the resources. And for me, just pressing these buttons on the top here. So we have got this button here. It is marked up to turn it on. And then this one here for recording. Now the camera comes set with a resolution of 4K 60, and that is the highest resolution and frame rate that this camera does. I think you can do 100 FPS at a slightly lower resolution than 4K. The problem is that in any of the 60 FPS settings, so whether it's 2.7K, 4K, or 1080p, it crops the image by quite a bit. And if you want to get the fuller, wider view, then you have to choose 30 FPS. And for me, that's the biggest downside of this camera compared to something like a GoPro. Now, the camera has actually got Wi-Fi built into it, and that's how you change the settings. So you have to plug it into your quadcopter, and you have to press the on button. And then once it's on, you need to go into your phone and connect directly to it with the Wi-Fi. And the Wi-Fi password is 8 number 8. You can't just go into the app and connect to it automatically, because the original 360 1R requires you to press something on the screen. So that's how to get around that. Now, you don't have access to all of the settings, but most of the ones that you need. So you can change the resolutions. But one of the problems I found is that you can't seem to change the anti-flicker settings. So I believe that the 1R comes with anti-flicker set to auto, which is fine. But when you are flying around lights, especially here in the UK, I'm getting a lot of flickering from the light frequency, and you can't set it to 50 Hertz or 60 Hertz manually. So that is something I would like to see changed in the app, because you need the screen to change those settings. The camera does have a microphone on it though, so a lot of the naked GoPro cameras, they don't have that. And this is where we need to be supporting Insta360, because they actually care about us FPVers. So this might not be as handy as a GoPro, but I think if we keep buying their products, then they are going to keep making products specifically for us, and that's what we want. And GoPro don't do that whatsoever. So if I take the footage recorded off of this and put it into the computer and download the Insta360 Studio, there's an option called FPV. Now, when I look at the FPV option and what it does to the image compared to the ultra wide, which is the other option, it doesn't really gain any field of view. What it does is it puts a sort of super view style filter on the original footage, and it makes it look like the naked GoPro footage. So it's not quite there yet. I'd like to see it be a wider image, and I'd also like to see options that we have with GoPro. But something I do love about this camera, and you can't do with a GoPro, is that all of the processing, so your stabilization, it is done after the fact that it's been recorded. Now, this isn't going to produce any results similar to Real Steady Go and a GoPro Hero 6. It's just not. What you're going to get with this is more like a hyper smooth that we get with the GoPro. So in terms of performance with this camera, when flying indoors in low light, the footage is going to look kind of grainy, a bit like how the Insta360 Go looks. However, you could say that is the case with GoPro footage as well. But if you are indoors with natural light shining through, then it's still a little bit grainy. I'd also like to see more stability options as well. We sort of have a hyper smooth type of stabilization, but if you are using a GoPro with Real Steady Go, then you can have a horizon lock. And also with the Insta360 Go as well, we had a horizon lock. I just don't think that there is enough field of view when it comes to how much the sensor captures of the camera, because I've exported the entire capture and it's actually not a huge field of view, so I don't think we're going to be able to see a complete horizon lock, but maybe some better stabilization options. Even if we lose some field of view, I think that would attract more people to this camera. Now, when I take it outside into the sun, you get a tiny little bit of jello. It's barely noticeable though. And I did all of my flights in 4K 30 to get that wider field of view. When you go 60 FPS, the field of view is just too narrow for me. But overall, I think the colors and the general picture of this camera is stunning, and it definitely has its applications in this hobby for sure. What I would like to see improved about this camera is the narrower field of view in the 60 FPS options. I think even if it is a processing issue, so that when it gets up to 4K 60, they have to reduce the field of view, otherwise there's a processing issue. I think if that was the case, then the 2.7K and 1080p options could at least have that wider field of view. It doesn't have to be across the board usually when it's a processing problem. If you look at the way GoPro does it with theirs, maybe on certain cameras it gets to 4K and they do have to reduce the field of view, but on the lower resolutions you can usually get the wide field of view. And then with the ND16 filter over the top on a sunny day, there's a little bit of grain there as well. Now, this time of year, the sun is very low on the horizon, so it could be something to do with that. It did get rid of all the jello, but at the same time, I was seeing some ISO noise because the ND filter has made it darker. So make of that what you will. Anyways, I absolutely love what Insta360 have done here with BetaFPV, and they are working with the FPV community, so I would ask you all to support them, because I'm going to be doing the same, and hopefully we will see some awesome cameras that are tailored to the FPV community, and we don't have to do a lot of work to get amazing results out of them. So there you go, that is my review of the naked Insta360 by Insta360 and BetaFPV. I'll put a link in the video description if you wish to get one, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.